I'm going to tell you a story about a beautiful death that changed my life. Okay, so sometimes it's hard for me to tell all of my stories because not every one of my stories has these big, elaborate endings. But they're still really profound to me because of the meaningfulness behind them, and the people that I connected with in these stories. So let me tell you this story. I hope you connect with it as much as I do. It's beautiful and sad all at the same time, and hopefully I won't cry too much. Okay, so it was a young couple, and the husband was on hospice. He was dying of some kind of cancer, and he was young, like in his 50s. And so was his wife. They had two young children, which of course made everything a little more difficult and just hard. And on top of all of that, they were Spanish speaking only. And I do not speak Spanish, unfortunately, even though since I've met them, I continuously say I'm going to learn Spanish. I'm working on it. But so I had to use a translator every single visit. And this guy needed visits probably 2-3 times a week for months on end, which I was happy to do so, but it was just a lot of using translators and being with this family. So because I was there so often, the wife and I connected so well, despite this translator. She spoke zero English. I spoke zero Spanish. And even though we had this translator on my phone, every visit, we still really connected. There were times where I didn't even need the translator to finish because her and I were just on the same page. I felt for her so hard. And I loved the patient too, of course, her husband, but he was really sick and was really lethargic most of the time. He needed a lot of help. She was helping him the whole time. She was the main caregiver. And sometimes I would forget that I would use these interpreters, and I would leave the house and hear a loud sigh and forget who that was. And then I'd remember, oh my God, there's an interpreter on the phone who's been interpreting all of this heavy information. And then I'd have to re-talk to the interpreter, apologizing for putting them, and they were on the phone for hours in this hospital visit, or in this hospice visit with this patient and me. So the interpreter was going through all of this too. They didn't know, they interpret all types of things. They didn't know they were going to be every day interpreting for this hospice patient. So then I'd have to debrief with the interpreter after all these visits. The reason why this patient and his family changed my life is because of the love that I experienced and witnessed while I was taking care of him. His wife, despite having two young children and a dying husband, was so caring and so loving and so wonderful to me, to her family, to her children, to her husband. I was there for his last breath. I was there with them for his last breath. And it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, despite it being so sad. Let me explain why it was so beautiful. I was in this room watching, just because death is not an emergency. I didn't have to do anything. He was very comfortable. I just happened to be there when he was taking his last breath. His parents were above his head, rubbing his head, speaking in Spanish, saying sweet nothings. Her parents were at his feet, rubbing his feet, and praying over him. His children were in bed with him. His shirt was off, and his wife was laying on his chest. And just, this is where I can't not cry. It's so beautiful. His wife is on his chest, of course, just saying how much she loved him and thanking him for a wonderful life. And he was fully unconscious. He was not responding back, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever witnessed. And the fact that they let me be there to witness all of that. And despite the grief, right? Despite the deep sadness, I don't cry about this because of the deep sadness. I cry about this because of the beauty that you witness at the end of life. The love in that room was palpable. It was so powerful. It overtook the sadness, the love they had for this man, and of course the grief they had for losing him. But it's the greatest act of love to care for your loved one when they're dying. It is so hard. It's so uncomfortable. It's so painful, but you still do it. You still show up. You still are in the room with them at their last breath and creating this special, sacred moment. And that is why I love my job. That is why I don't think hospice nursing is depressing. That is why I don't think dying on hospice is depressing, for moments like this. And I've seen countless moments like these. This one particularly sticks out to me because I feel like it could have gone a very different way. He was a young person dying with young children, and that's to me extra hard, right? And there's a lot of denial when that's going on. And this family didn't do that. They embraced what was happening and they supported each other. And this man had a beautiful death. And I will never, ever, ever forget this family. And I want to share it with you so you can also hopefully feel the sacredness and the beauty that can be end of life. This is a really important story for me and a really important family that has affected my life greatly. So thank you for listening.